will speak in the order in which their name appears on the April 5th ballot. For Ward 3, Karl Skala will go first, and Tom Leuther will go second. For the audience members here this evening, there are note cards. Please write your question on the card, and league members will pick them up and give them to me. I will try and sort them by topic so we don't end up asking the same question over and over again. You know, I know you all really want to ask them about roll carts. I know you do. But we're not going to spend the whole time talking about it. I think we've talked about it enough. After questions from the audience and possibly from me, we will have 1-minute closing statements. Everybody got it? Everybody got your little note cards and a pen? I think there's some pens in the corner if you don't have a pen, so feel free. We're kind of informal, so you can get up if you need to. We're not going to make you sit down. Oh, and the lovely lady in pink will collect the cards. All right, is everybody ready? Karl?
You bet.
All right. We will now begin with opening statements for Ward 3 candidates. Mr. Skala, you may present your opening statement.
My name is Karl Skala. I'm the two-term incumbent in the City Council for Ward 3. I wanted to give my appreciation and thanks to Renee Hulsoff and all of the folks that have put this on, the sponsors and so on. I probably need not go into a lot of my background in terms of being a two-term city councilman and a background with planning and zoning for 6 years, Energy and Environment Commission for about 14 years, chamber member for about 11 years with the Government Affairs Committee and so on. So let me cut to the chase. You know, Columbia is a great place to live, but we need to make it even better. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the state. The cost of living is 5% below the national average. Consistently, we are ranked near the top in national lists of best performing cities and best places for small businesses and careers. We recently got the cleanest independent financial audit in 20 years. I'm running for re-election in the 3rd Ward because I want to continue to get results for the 3rd Ward. Neglected for a long time, growth has outstripped the roads and city services such as snow removal and police coverage. With the projects I've sponsored during my council terms, we're catching up, but we still have a long way to go. Multiple projects are underway, including a new North Side Police Station, an East Side Substation, and road improvements on Ballinger Lane and Keene Street. Bus shelters are funded and are also underway. And the Hominy Branch Trail is in completion for Phase 2 right now. It's underway for Phase 2. The Phase 1 has been completed. I have the experience and familiarity with how the city works to get results. I want to make the 3rd Ward an even better place to live, learn, work, and play, and I deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skala. Mr. Leuther, you may present your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Renee and KFRU, for hosting this and the League of Women Voters. I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to share my passion for Columbia. We came here 18 years and we started a church, and Columbia has been very good to us, and we want to give back to Columbia. We believe Columbia is a wonderful city, and we want to be able to add to the future of this particular city. I'm involved in a lot of not-for-profit organizations. I believe I understand times and seasons that we're in. I'm able to prioritize budgets. I've done that many times for many different not-for-profit organizations that will assist the city. I believe in economic growth. When I looked at the Columbia Citizen Survey, I realized that the #1 priority is public safety and roads, and that especially is included in our particular ward, Ward 3. And with violent crime being up 46% and losing almost 10 officers in the last few months, when our budget is for 164 and we have about 156, I'm asking questions like, why aren't we funding all the officers? Why is there 0 status for our officers on 12? Actually, talked to one officer, it's 14-hour shifts. They start at 6 a.m. and don't get done until 8 p.m. What can be done? Well, I believe I have a plan to make a difference for our public safety. I think that's most important. Public safety will bring in other businesses. They look at our city, they ask, is this a safe city? Is it a city that has a good education system, which I applaud Columbia Public Schools. I believe we have a good educational system here. I also believe that I can unite together some of the differences that we've had with the university. In fact, we were talking about the university parking and downtown parking and how we can come together and work out some solutions here. So I appreciate this opportunity. I believe I'm going to bring some fresh ideas and fresh eyes to the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leuther. Do we have our questions collected? Oh, people are still writing them. That wasn't enough time. Maybe we should have given you guys longer to talk. How unusual. Oh, how unusual. Oh, in the meantime, I've got questions. How about that? I have questions that were submitted to me from the League of Women Voters, for those of you who don't think I should be allowed to ask questions. I have a few questions that the League has given me, and I'll start with the first one they gave me. And, oh, I need to tell you how we're going to do this. That would be important. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry. Candidates will each have 60 seconds to answer questions. We will alternate the order on who answers the questions between the two candidates. The first question will go to Mr. Skala. Okay?
You bet.
Downtown has become a construction zone with many new high-rise apartment buildings. A year or so ago, the public was told the downtown infrastructure cannot take any new construction. But since then, we've had many new apartment buildings go up. Is there a problem with infrastructure and parking? Is downtown overdeveloped? Karl.
Well, I don't know if I'd consider it a matter of being overdeveloped. I think we are certainly overdeveloped when it comes to downtown student high-density residential development. I think we've reached the saturation point. My vote on the council suggests that. I voted for the first high-density downtown residential unit. I thought it was in the works and it was appropriate and it was near the university. There was another one that was difficult to judge. But subsequently, all 5 of my votes have been against the downtown high-density student development because it has a precise kind of impact on infrastructure that it was unintended in the original envisioning of the C2 zoning. C2 zoning was originally established for retail with some allowances for residential housing, but the high-density residential has overwhelmed our infrastructure. We are waiting staff reports to make sure that to justify the kinds of development agreements that are necessary to pay for this infrastructure. But in my opinion, the downtown overstructure is being unfairly taxed at the expense of some folks that are waiting in line for other sewer issues.
Thank you. Tom, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm okay.
Okay,
with it. Thank
great.
you very much.
Go ahead.
It certainly complicates issues when you have a university right next to your downtown. And with the SEC bringing in more students, it put a greater demand for housing. And so that was the purpose of putting up some of these high-density rental properties for the students. I have an engineering background. I was in the engineering field first before I went into the ministry, and I believe that our city engineers are very qualified to determine whether the infrastructure can handle this type of growth. So far, they say we are able to handle that particular growth, and I put my trust in that. I can't say that I remember all the formulas on how to figure out PSIs and the flow of certain things, but I have an understanding of how this infrastructure works. And so I believe that right now we're at a place where we need to think about how we're going to increase our development, especially our business development and economic growth here in Columbia.
Thank you very much. This question will go first to Tom, and I'm going to build, I got this question handed to me, I'm going to build a little bit since we're kind of talking housing in downtown Columbia. The question reads, I believe that one of the important issues for Columbia is affordable housing for moderate and low-income people. And I'm going to build on this question by asking, do you believe that when they overbuild student housing that we have cut into the ability or the desirability of developers to develop low and moderate income housing? Do you think that the market has gone in one direction or another direction? Tom.
You know, I don't think it affects the affordable housing in that sense. What I think it affects the affordable housing is like the Prop 2 that my opponent proposed to have, which would have originally increased new building, residential building by $2 a square foot and $5 a square foot. Now, they did scale it back. It wasn't quite that much when they put it on Prop 2. However, it would have cost break time there on Grindstone $919 additional $1,000 to build, and the owner wouldn't have built that. Therefore, it would have, we wouldn't have had jobs. It wouldn't have generated tax revenue for the city. It wouldn't have generated tax fuel for the city. And so those type of fees is what's really the reason why we have such a high cost of living. Our high cost of living, we're the highest cost of living city in Missouri, and it all points to housing. And most of it has to do with taxes and fees. And it's going to affect everybody. Even the poor are going to be affected by these types of fees.
Thank you very much. Karl.
Well, those numbers are ridiculous. On the ballot issue for that development fee was never $2 and $5. It was $1 and $1.50, and it was fought by $150,000 worth of contributions from the development community because they wanted you to pay for all of the infrastructure. Frankly, this is kind of a ridiculous argument. The fact of the matter is that the downtown housing is an issue as it affects affordability, because we all know what the game is. The game is to make things uncomfortable enough with high-density housing, with parking overflow and so on and so forth, such that that folks in the neighborhood tend to want to move out of the neighborhood, and they're willing to sell some of their properties. So some of the development community can combine some of these properties together and then build higher density housing in some of those areas. The problem with that is it destroys neighborhoods. And we have to do something about that. And frankly, we are getting to the point where we're going to reconsider some of the tweaks to the Urban Conservation Overlay District in the Benton-Stevens neighborhood.
For this question, we'll go to Karl Skala first. Do you believe we have a relationship problem with the county?
Yes. And frankly, I tried to lead the charge with the city council. I'm 1/7 of the vote, and at one time or another, we were almost at a level. I'm not giving anything away from a closed meeting, but we were at a level where we were going to approach the county with a concession and an agreement. If you read the judge's report that came down, it was pretty clear to me that if we didn't get together, we were going to have some difficulties, and that's in fact what happened. But later on, the council shifted, and we got further and further away from that agreement that we kind of had set in place. And it has deteriorated our relationship with the county. At one time, we had a terrible relationship with the county under Ray Beck. Then it improved with Bill Watkins, and it has continued to deteriorate to some degree with our current city manager. I think the council could have done something about that, but in fact, we failed to do so.
Thank you. Tom Leuther, do you think we have a relationship problem with the county?
We do, and it's been very interesting as I filed for candidacy that some of the candidates that have filed for Boone County Commission candidacy have come to me and said they're looking forward, if I get elected, looking forward to working with me because of my ability to unify and understand problems and putting some of our difference behind us so there are no lawsuits. And that's going to be our goals as I get elected for City Council.
Thank you very much, Tom. This question will come to you first. And I'm going to borrow from your opening statement, and you both mentioned public safety as a priority for Columbia's citizens. But there's that pesky little thing called a budget that must be reckoned with. How would you address getting more police officers and increasing public safety in the city of Columbia, given our current budget constraints?
Well, when I studied the fiscal year policy from the city, 10% of our budget goes to public safety. And this is what I'm talking about prioritizing. For instance, if you save money to put a new floor in your house, but your air conditioner went out, would you go borrow money if you're already indebted to the max? Our city has a $380 million debt that most people don't know about. And so I would say let's prioritize. Let's make public safety the number one. That's what the city, the citizens are crying out for. They want public safety to be number one. And if we increase the budget by 1%, that's $4 million that we can add to public safety. That's adding a lot of police officers. Plus, our budget allows us to have 160 officers on the force, and we only have 156 at this particular time.
Thank you, Tom. Karl?
Well, I certainly would love to see documentation that we have a $380 million debt in this city. That's something I certainly would like to see. But the fact of the matter is that 80% of our budget is spoken for. It's spoken for in water and light budgets and so on and so forth that we run as businesses. We have a general fund that comprises about 20%. So instead of the $424 million budget that we have, we really have a budget of about $90 million. 2/3 of that is for public safety, essentially. And that's the salaries for police officers and so on. You asked the question, how do we pay for police officers? We tried to do that in November of 2014 with a property tax. I told the mayor that that was too much of an ask. It was 30 cents. And if we would have asked for half of it, we probably would have gotten it. He refused to lower that amount. So we lost that election. There's only 3 ways to hire police officers, and my daughter's a police officer. One is 2 ways actually: taxes, CID taxes, or sales taxes, or property taxes, and that's the only route that we have for funding police officers.
Can I comment on that, please?
I don't think we have a method for doing that, but you may get to build on it with this question because it kind of relates.
Okay,
This
all
is
right.
sort of it's more of I guess this is kind of like a pop quiz question
Pop quiz.
about your understanding of how the city budget works and governance and transferring funds. So, what are the limitations, and this came from an audience member, what are the limitations of transferring city funds between allocated sources, such as, and the question reads, I already know part of the answer to this one, from parks to police or from other allocated budgetary funds to police, for example? And I think, Karl, this one goes to you first.
All right. If it's in the general fund, some of these funds are fungible, and they can be moved around to some degree. On the other hand, there are stipulations, and those stipulations include what we have promised the public in terms of the referendums. If they have voted on a particular tax that goes to fund the general fund, then in fact we have to carry through with our promises. Otherwise, we would never get any more money. And the answer to the other part of that question is most of the rest of that budget, that 80% that we're talking about, some of it is in surplus funds in order for us to ensure that we have good credit ratings so we can borrow money, just like a home would in terms of a mortgage or a car or something like that. But those funds, it's illegal to take those funds and use them, parks funds, for example, to use parks funds for police officers. That is against the law. It's just not doable. So the only 3 alternatives are for tax. It's tax revenue, either property tax or sales tax, and we're competing with the school district, as you know right now, for a 65-cent tax increase with the school board.
Tom.
And Karl's right about it's illegal to transfer a certain amount of funds for other projects. He's absolutely right about that. However, the Parks and Recreation just hired their own security company in order to patrol our parks and our parks at this particular time because we don't have enough public safety to do that. So where is that money coming from is the real question we need to ask. And to your first question, Karl, I do have here all debt summary from the city of Columbia. We have a $256 million revenue bond, $117 million special obligation bond, and $12 million of special obligation notes.
Thank you. Next question is going to go to Tom first. And this has to do with boards and commissions. It has been expressed several times, I know, that we have many boards and commissions with many openings that people are not serving on. Some of the criticism that's been levied at the council is that folks serve on these boards and commissions and the council pays them no heed. What message do you have for citizens to encourage them to serve on these boards and commissions? Tom.
Well, I believe that one of the reasons why a lot of these consultants have been hired is because some of the leadership in city councils just not willing to back the talent and the information that these boards give. My campaign manager was on planning and zoning, and you know, he got so frustrated because he gave some good opinions, good information, and you know, and all of a sudden when it comes before city council after these people do all this work, then all of a sudden there's some type of motion of let's get a consultant. And we have a money problem already. Why are we spending millions of dollars on consultants when we have talented people that are willing to volunteer their times? Who wants to volunteer their time after you do all that work and someone says, I really don't appreciate it, I want to get another opinion?
Karl.
Well, I would like to volunteer my time, and the fellow that you're talking about, Andy Lee, sent me an email suggesting that the reason that he was tired of serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission is because he didn't agree with my decision on CVS. I served with the Planning and Zoning Commission for 6 years, starting in 1999. I was the vice chair for the last 2 years. I served with the Environment and Energy Commission for 14 years through the course of, not while I was on council. And frankly, for city council, I served for 2 terms, 5 of those years as a volunteer. And when I served on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think we tried to make it very clear to the city council that we didn't care if they disagreed with our judgments, just to talk about what the process was all about, and to give us just due for adding that input. We get 2 different kinds of input. We get input from the professional staff, and we get input from our boards and commissions. That is citizen volunteer input, and I will tell you, and I would encourage anybody to volunteer for that. It's a good way, frankly, to prepare for the city council.
You brought up CVS.
I did.
Oh, let's talk about CVS for just a minute.
Let's do that.
I'll put my mass transit question to the next one. I'll give you some warning. So, Karl, we'll start with you. Do you think the CVS issue and discussion over the course of time was handled in the most appropriate and expedient manner on the part of the City Council?
Yes, but CVS could already be in business if they would have treated us just like they have treated countless other communities throughout the nation. I visited my daughter in Columbus, Ohio. CVS has fit in with the rest of the community, and I just can't understand why there was this adversarial relationship and this nonsense about, well, the goalposts are moving because all of a sudden we had a C2 interim. We used that C2 interim legally, not to prohibit any kind of construction, but in fact to add an additional layer of scrutiny so that we wouldn't wind up with 25-story buildings that would cause damage to the downtown area. All CVS would have had to have done was to make a functional second story, which was the issue for that particular building, and I think they would have gotten the endorsement of the City Council. They refused to do so, and frankly, CVS is going to be back. They're still around. They still want to build 3 stores. And I suspect they eventually will come around and make the concessions necessary to fit in with our community vision.
Thank you. Tom, do you think it was handled in the best way possible?
I really don't think it was handled in the best way possible. In fact, just recently I had the attorney of CVS seek me out to let me know their side of the story. Number one, they did have a second story, a functional second story, but the City Council couldn't decide what was functional. Secondly, it met the height requirement to be a second story facility. Thirdly, CVS offered to repair the infrastructure there at the corner and give an additional $700,000 and repair the infrastructure on 4th Street. They would have generated $385,000 in general revenue for our city. They would have brought in several good paying jobs. Pharmacists make good paying money, so do store managers, and would have been available to make good jobs for this part of the city for people to even walk to go to work. And so I don't think it was handled well at all. I think they were snubbed, and I think it gave the business community, this thinking of, well, golly, if they're going to treat CVS like that, they're going to probably treat us this way, so why should we do business in Columbia?
All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit. You mentioned walking. Some people take the bus. We have a bus system. This question goes to you first, Tom. As far as our mass transit system is concerned, what's your assessment of it, and how would you improve it? In 1 minute or less. Sorry.
Well, I think there needs to be a little better survey on how we can use our bus system a little more effective. Now, I heard from Como Connect, and they gave a very compelling argument on how efficient it is. But you know, we can always improve. But what most people don't realize is that our bus system is funded, 90% of it, by federal funds. And so if we don't have a bus system, then we also lose those federal funds. So I think it needs to be evaluated and looked at.
Thank you. Karl?
Actually, oops, is it on? Oh.
I think so.
Actually, our bus systems are not 90% funded by federal funds. We do get federal subsidies for some of the buses and so on. But the issue with the bus system and how it's financed comes out of a half-cent transportation sales tax, which competes for dollars for transit, road repair, and the airport. And at the moment, the airport is high on the list with the chamber and the university and the city, as far as that goes, with 60% of those funds. That leaves 20% each for road repair and for the transit system. So we're always constantly underfunded with this system. I think we have made some tweaks to decentralize the bus system so that we can approach more folks, but it's always a matter of money ultimately. And I think one of the things that we're improving is we have to attract more ridership. Perhaps we're going to move to a system where we can have free bus transportation for the university, but we have to cooperate with the university to do that. There are private companies that are competing and so on. One of the things I'm very proud of in this last budget is that we have funded another 30 or so bus shelters. And to make this system attractive for lots of folks, I think is key to making this system work.
Now, I know Karl really doesn't like philosophical questions.
I hate philosophical
I know you
questions.
do. And I don't know about Tom yet, so we'll find out if Tom likes philosophical questions. This is a philosophical question. So, Karl, you get it first.
Okay.
When a proposal comes before the City Council that would likely be favorable to the city as a whole, however, not for your particular ward, what would be your guide in your vote or response?
Philosophically speaking,
in 1 minute or less.
No, in 1 minute or less. You know, when I approach decision making when it comes to the third ward, it's pretty easy for me to represent the third ward if 75 or 80% of the folks have a particular point of view. That was the case with the roll carts, by the way. The folks said that they didn't want them, and I said before we even turned it over a public referendum that I would represent that view. That the tough stuff comes when it's 50-50, and you know you're going to irritate half the folks, so you better have a rationale to do it. The same is true when it comes to citywide issues. That is, you can irritate half the folks with a tough decision if you have a rationale and you do the research to make sure that you can justify what your decision is. That's my approach to making decisions in the City Council.
Tom, philosophical question.
Well, I would get as much information as I could, and if I felt like it really benefited the city, I would try to educate the people in Ward 3. And if a large percentage of Ward 3, which I would represent, would oppose it, well, then I would take the leadership stand and say, I'm going to support the will of the people in Ward 3.
Thank you very much. Oh, Karl, you brought it up. You brought up roll carts. And I have to ask. So citizenry voted, and Tom, you get this question first. The citizenry voted in the city of Columbia for 6 months, if they understood the ballot language, and that's a separate argument for a separate day, that we would not discuss any other options but keep the black bag system for 6 months. If you are on the council at the point at which a discussion comes back up, what will your position be on Columbia's trash system?
Well, I believe this last vote was most practical for everybody in Columbia. They got to decide. And I think that's important because there's a lot of people who want it, and there's some people who don't want it, and they have valid reasons. And I believe it should be brought before the people again to vote on. But I think the language ought to be a little more understanding.
Very good. Karl?
Well, there were some issues of confusion. People have asked me this question before, and I will give you the same answer that I gave to them. I thought if this was a lopsided decision, that the City Council would probably not weigh in 6 months. They would probably take at least a year, maybe longer. It wasn't a lopsided decision. There was some confusion in the voting. I suspect what's going to happen is that we will have public hearings for sure, but the City Council probably will take up this issue again, and I would expect, my read of what the City Council is thinking, if that's reliable, and that's always it's often a problem. But nonetheless, I think my read of it is to preserve choice. That is to have some sort of hybrid system to at least allow people to get accustomed to roll carts in some fashion or another, because there are some parts of the city that's not practical. The roads may be too narrow and the arms may not work, and so on and so forth. I suspect the City Council will take this issue up in public hearings and tweak this to preserve choice, and I think that probably is the best outcome under the circumstances.
All right, thank you very much. Believe it or not, gentlemen, the end is near.
Oh, isn't there another philosophical question?
Oh, I'll have to think about that and come up with one. If the audience has another philosophical question for Karl and Tom, we would love to hear it. I know that they really are excited about those. This one's also comes from the League of Women Voters, and it goes to Karl first. The Missouri State Legislature has voted to impose large cuts to the University of Missouri's budget. You didn't know you just got elected to the legislature, did you? What can the Columbia City Council do to assist the university, since Columbia's economy will be directly impacted by said budget cuts? Karl.
We have done some things. We've acted in concert with the county. This is one of those rare occasions where we're getting along together, and through our support to the university, because we all know that we're in this together, and it's an economic engine. But we can do more about this, and I think the way to do more about this is to have kind of a two-pronged approach. Obviously, the university with Dr. Middleton and so on is looking into this whole racial equity thing. It's part of our strategic plan with the city for social equity and racial equity and infrastructure equity and so on. I represent the National League of Cities in a council with racial equity and leadership, and they provide lots of national tools for our local cities to deal with these issues of equity. I think we can help the university by setting the tone and setting an example for dealing with racial equity as it relates to our community and our police department, and frankly with the Civil War that we still seem to be fighting in Missouri with respect to racial issues.
Thank you very much. Tom.
Would you repeat the question one more time for me,
Yes.
please?
The Missouri State Legislature has voted to impose large cuts to the University of Missouri's budget. What can the Columbia City Council do to help the university, since Columbia's economy will be directly impacted by budget cuts to the University of Missouri?
Well, the City Council has already given their full support to stand with the University of Missouri, which I'm very proud of. It was a very good thing to do, to let the University of Missouri know that we stand with them. But one of the things that we've done, I'm part of the government affairs with Chambers of Commerce. We went down there and talked to our senators and our representatives and let them know that this particular cut is going to affect our economy. But you know, our three main driving economic forces here in Columbia is the university, insurance, and medical. And this is why I'm so passionate to increase economic growth for our city, manufacturing, other types of businesses to come in, because I don't think it's wise to have a portfolio that depends on just three main driving economic forces here in Columbia.
Thank you very much. This is going to be our last question before we go to closing statements. It's kind of philosophical.
Okay.
This is your 12th question, believe it or not. Okay, Tom, you get it first. What is your vision for downtown Columbia? Even though I don't think the Third War picks up downtown Columbia. It's a subject that comes before the council with increasing regularity. What would you say your vision is for downtown Columbia if you could wave your magic wand?
Well, we can't look into a crystal ball. We know that economy changes and goes up and down. However, when I lived in Fort Worth, Texas, and when we had the economic crisis from the oil crash that we had, Fort Worth became a ghost town. But somebody had vision for it. They brought in dense population. They brought in condominiums. They brought in high-rise apartments and rental property for everybody, which boosts the economy because, you know, after all, a lot of our sales tax revenue we're losing on the internet, about 25% of our sales tax revenue. But you know, you can't contact Amazon.com and get a cup of coffee, or you can't, get on the internet and maybe, go down to a restaurant and have it already prepared for you. So I believe that having a thriving economy downtown is so very important, which will stimulate and invite more businesses, restaurants, services downtown, and I believe it'll become a thriving community again.
Karl.
Well, there are two words that come to mind when I think about downtown and planning and so on and so forth for the downtown area. Those are balance and sustainability. Even the Chamber of Commerce in their economic development plan talks about sustainable economic development. And I'm very proud of the fact that I think it was around 2007 or 8, and Barbara Hoppe was also a part of this. Jerry Wade, who is no longer with us, was as well. We started down this road about thinking about planning and forming a comprehensive plan for the city that we had never had before. We finally have a comprehensive plan now. It's called Columbia Imagined. That's my vision for the city. It was the outgrowth of the visioning process that we spent years on, and it was a reaffirmation of the visioning process as to what the community wanted to see, not only for the downtown area, but for the entire city. That's my plan. And I think that the result of that later this summer is going to be a very important series of meetings to determine what the unified development code is going to be for the downtown area and the environs and subdivision requirements as well. It's up to you, and we already have the comprehensive plan. That's also my vision.
Thanks, Karl. All right. We've come to the end of our Third Ward Council Forum, where we get to hear from you why in the world you would want to be on the council again. No, that's really not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to give your 1-minute closing statements. We will go in reverse ballot order. So this time, Mr. Tom Leuther, you may make your closing statement.
Well, I believe my record with partnering with the education at Douglas High School and being part of a drug rehabilitation program for women that have children demonstrates my desire to help people move forward in our community. I'm the only council candidate that's been endorsed by Columbia Police Officers Association. I've also been endorsed by 2 other mayors of other cities, and I believe that stands for something. I have a history of unifying people together of all different faiths, all different cultures, and all different lifestyles. And I believe I can bring that ability to the city council and being able to look forward and find out what we can agree on and move forward into things that we can agree on.
Thank you very much. That's Tom Leuther. He is running for Third Ward, and now we'll hear from the incumbent, Mr. Karl Skala.
Well, once again, I want to thank you and everybody here for attending this. Sometimes this is not always an easy thing to just sit very quietly and listen to us drone on and on. But I'm running for re-election because I want to continue to get results for the Third Ward in particular, but citywide as well. The Third Ward has been neglected for a long time. Growth has outstripped the roads and city services and police coverage. And the projects, and I'm very proud of what I have done over the last 6 years. We've sponsored many programs and so on. Multiple projects are underway. I will repeat, including a new North Side Police Station, an East Side substation, road improvements on Ballinger Lane and Keene Street. Bus shelters are funded, and the Hominy Branch Trail is completed. I have the experience and familiarity with how the city works to get results. I want to make the Third Ward a better place, and I have delivered on that promise. And by the way, there are many reasons why any citizen may choose to run for city council, even despite civic inexperience. But I think you ought to ask Mr. Leuther about something about this stealth campaign that seems to be occurring. And you can take a look at that with the video Leuther exposed.
Thank you very much. That was Karl Skala making his closing statement. We want to thank Mr. Tom Leuther, Mr. Karl Skala, for coming this evening and being with us and answering questions. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We will now take a short break, exactly 4 minutes, no more, no less, to bring up our candidates for mayor. Everybody stand up, stretch your legs, maybe go get a lemonade or a coffee. That includes you listening in Radio Land. Run to the kitchen. You can do that. Get a snack, and we'll be back after this on News Talk 1400 KFRU. Our timers will provide a 30-second warning. Okay, so I already said that. When the sign is held up, your time is up. Candidates will make their opening statement in ballot order. And the ballot order means that Mr. Skip Walther, you may make your opening statement first.
Thanks very much. When I decided to run for the mayor of Columbia, it wasn't because I had a personal agenda or because I was backed by any special interest group. It was because that I believe that the polarization and the divisiveness that has occurred in City Council and in our city needs to stop. Now, the mayor of Columbia really can't have any significant effect on the tone of politics at the state or national level, but I firmly believe that the mayor can set the tone for a collaborative government within Columbia. We don't have to fight about every issue. We really don't. And if I'm elected mayor, I intend to reach consensus if possible, compromise if not, so that we can maximize, and to do that we need to maximize public input, focus on transparency, and leave Columbia citizens with the notion that the process and the result has been appropriate and fair. That's my vision as mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brian Treece, you may make your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Renee, and KFRU, along with the League of Women Voters and Columbia Public Library. You know, Columbia is a great place to live and raise a family, but we have a few challenges right now that we have to deal with head on. For the last 25 years, I've been an advocate on transportation and economic development issues and healthcare and law enforcement issues. Here in Columbia, I chaired the Historic Preservation Commission, where we led the effort to preserve and redevelop downtown. I currently chair the Downtown Leadership Council. That's the group that the City Council asked to look at Columbia's infrastructure issues and make recommendations to improve public confidence in how well the city plans for growth. You know, what we found was surprising. Our police and fire haven't kept pace with the rate of our city's growth, and at 28%, the public's confidence in how well the city plans for growth was at an all-time low. You know, if Columbia is going to be one of the fastest growing cities in the country or in the Midwest, we need a blueprint. And as mayor, I want to use that blueprint to build on what's great about Columbia by investing in our neighborhoods and improving our infrastructure and expanding our public safety and adding more community policing to keep our families safe. And I want to make our city government open, honest, and transparent. You know, as mayor, I want to roll up my sleeves and get to work. And instead of more of the same, I think it's time for a new page in Columbia's history that builds a city that we all love and as diverse and inclusive as we all know it can be.
Thank you very much. Those were our opening statements from our mayoral candidates, Skip Walther and Brian Treece. As we get into our first questions, we will take questions. I've gotten several from our audience, and I have some that have been given to me from the League of Women Voters. If there's any other last-minute submissions, please be sure and hold them up, and folks from the League of Women Voters will be happy to pick them up, and we will get them up here to me. We will alternate the order on who answers the question first, just like we did with the 3rd Ward Council candidates. So, we're going to begin with one that the League has given me, and Skip, you will answer this one first. As mayor, what leadership style would you bring to the City Council?
The style that I was able to project as the president of the Missouri Bar in 2009 and 2010, the style that I projected as the chair of the Downtown Community Improvement District, and prior to that time, that entity was known as the Special Business District Board of Directors. I was been on that commission since 1997. I was the chair of the Parking Task Force. I've chaired a number of other organizations. And the way I like to lead meetings and lead groups is through collaboration. I'm not going to tell you that I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I do believe that it's important that we all listen to each other and value the opinions that we have and try to make decisions based upon consensus, based upon what everybody thinks, because I firmly believe that the group collaborative process is by far the best way to move Columbia forward.
Thank you. Brian?
Well, you know, I think the mayor and the city council should set the tone for how the city operates. And I think part of the frustration we've had that when the Downtown Leadership Council looked at the city's lack of confidence in the city's decision-making process was a lack of trust in how that city makes decisions. You know, as mayor, I want to make sure that our process is as open, honest, and transparent as it can be. And part of that is to set high expectations. And whether that requires a change of leadership or a change of expectations or a change of culture, I think the mayor and the council need to work together to set those clear expectations and frankly, instill accountability for better results to meet the public's expectations.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. The next question, I'm going to pick up on something that you mentioned in terms of how the city responds to, as a council and as the mayor, responds to being given information. And some of that information that you have to consider comes from boards and commissions. And there's been criticism. I brought this up with the third ward council candidates. Some of those boards and commissions seem to be overlooked when they submit their feedback to the city council. It's thank you very much, and then the council chooses to do whatever it chooses to do, ignoring the recommendation of that board or commission. How would you handle philosophically, don't laugh, the feedback and the recommendations you get from those boards and commissions? We'll start with you, Brian.
Sure. My bias is certainly commission-driven. Look, I chaired the Historic Preservation Commission for 5 years. I've served on it for 10. I currently chair the Downtown Leadership Council. And I would, as mayor, want to have a more commission-driven city government. You know, we have hundreds of volunteers that contribute volunteer hours every month on those boards and commissions. And I understand the frustration of a planning and zoning member. But instead of stepping back, I thought it was time to step up, and the issues that we've been working on are now on the council's table. Let me give you an example when it came to the Downtown Leadership Council. The council asked us to look at the city's infrastructure issues. We had a very thoughtful public engagement process for 6 months. We generated a 60-page report with 14 recommendations, and it sat on the council's desk for 14 months until we finally got a work session with the council. When we did have that work session, they spent 40 minutes looking at a new design for the city's flag until we really got into the meat of the infrastructure crisis and, frankly, the crisis of confidence that our voters have in their city government right now. I want to change that.
Thank you very much. Skip.
Serving on boards and commissions is a very important public service, civic service that all of us should strive for. And you know, as mayor, I think it's incumbent upon the mayor, because the mayor appoints an awful lot of the board members and task force members. I think it's incumbent upon the mayor to make the expectations of the boards and commissions very clear, so that there's no misunderstanding about what they're there to do. And then I think it's very important for the city council and the mayor to adopt and take action on the information and the advice and the intelligence that is provided by boards and commissions. Now, with respect to the Planning and Zoning Commission that Karl served on for so long, you know, I'm tempted to say that I'm in favor of a change in the rules so that if there is a significant majority of P&Z votes in a particular issue, that should require perhaps a supermajority on city council, because I value the work that P&Z performs and the effort that they provide, and perhaps we need to think about valuing the opinions of the boards perhaps through a rule change.
Thank you very much. That was Skip Walther. We're going to now talk a little bit about transportation. We're going to start by talking about, it's a question from our audience, about the airport. And this will go to Skip first. Improvements to the airport have been discussed for many, 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 many years. Is it necessary to expand to the tune of $40 million? And I can't vouch for that number. This is what was submitted.
Yeah, I don't know where that, I'm not familiar with that number, but I can speak to the issue of expanding the airport. I'm sure most of us have been out there. The airport terminal consists of essentially 3 trailers. You know, that's really not appropriate for the city of Columbia. We've got to figure out a way to provide, to make a bigger terminal and to expand our runways, and we also have to make sure that the city of Ashland and private landowners do not hem us in, which is a risk and a possibility. And so I think the city airport is critically important to the future of Columbia, and we really need to focus on ways to preserve the airport, provide ourselves with future opportunities for expansion and figure out a way to provide a new terminal, expand air service, and make it more convenient for our residents, because then we will have an economic engine that will benefit all of us.
Thank you very much. Brian?
Well, clearly we need to modernize our airport to meet current peak projected demand, but also homeland security issues. I also think this is a major economic generator for the city of Columbia. We have at least two businesses, the University of Missouri and Veterans United, that rely on that airport every week, either to send their employees out to satellite locations or to bring visiting professors and visiting employees here. And I'm one of those people who believe if we build it, they will come. We need to modernize that airport in a way that encourages additional flights, additional opportunities, additional airports to visit. I've already engaged the mayor of the city of Jefferson City about creating a regional funding mechanism where Jefferson City partners with the City of Columbia to help create a regional asset there for that airport. And I think with my skill set, we can have a mix of local and regional and state and federal funding that can meet that need. Whether $40 million is enough or not, I'm always frustrated when we set a price tag and then ask people to tell us what they can build for $40 million. I'd rather set the expectations of what do we need to have built and how much will it cost us.
Thank you very much, Brian. Skip. Oh, I'm sorry. We already did that. I've moved ahead.
I can continue.
It's my first error, okay, so I've got my one. I'm done. Next question, and we'll start with Brian. Sorry about that. How can we improve our bus system?
Well, the simple thing we can do to improve our bus system is increase ridership. And I think the best way to increase ridership is to have bus shelters. I mean, it's a simple fix. I get frustrated when I see people shopping at Lucky's and then sitting in the dirt with their bags of groceries. How can we expect someone to get dressed up in a suit to go for a job interview if they're standing in the rain? Something as simple as benches and bus shelters would go a long way to encouraging the existing ridership to use it more often. Now, we live close to town. We live close to downtown. We like to walk downtown, but there are times that if we had a more dependable and frequent schedule, that we would use that bus. It shouldn't take 4 hours to go round trip to the mall to buy a new shirt and then come back. Right? And so I think there are some modest modifications that we can do, and then use GIS more effectively to see where the riders are coming from, where do they want to go, and allocate our bus schedule accordingly.
Thank you very much. Now, Skip.
I applaud the efforts of the City Council to expand the shelters for the bus riders. This has been a long-standing, difficult problem for the City of Columbia. There have been many attempted fixes, and frankly, they've not been successful. The possible solutions would be to resurrect a relationship and a communication with the University of Missouri to try to achieve some economies of scale and combine the university bus system with the city bus system. That's a possibility, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have the answer to it, because this has been a problem that's gone on for decades. And some very smart people and some very good people have tried to figure out a solution to this problem, and it's yet to come to fruition. So it's something we need to provide our residents. It's an important service that we provide, and we just have to continue to try to look for solutions.
Thank you very much. We are visiting with the candidates for mayor for the City of Columbia on the April ballot on News Talk 1400 KFRU, and the candidates are Skip Walther and Brian Treece, just in case you've been under a rock. And I just want to say I love the person who just gave me this question, and you'll know why in just a minute. This person writes, I'm a resident of Ward 4. We've been promised that our sewer problems will be fixed for more than 5 years. I'm raising my hand. Brian knows this. He lives in our neighborhood. But developers' priorities seem to be getting in the way of the city addressing our serious problems. How would you address this as mayor? Skip, we'll start with you.
Well, I've lived in the 1st Ward and the 4th Ward, so I'm also familiar with sewer problems and sewer backups. And it's a problem that we need to solve. But funding new and old infrastructure is one of the primary issues that we have as a city. And I do agree that the disproportionate share of expenditures supports new development. The longtime residents in Columbia shouldn't have to wait in line. Those who live in older neighborhoods, they've been paying taxes for such a long time, and we've got to figure out a way to repair their sewers and their streets. This is an issue of fairness, and I have said over and over again that we need to rethink the developer fee that failed a couple of years ago. I am confident that the developers in this town understand the problem and are willing to pay a fair share, but what we need to do, really need to do, is bring everybody to the table. We didn't do that with the developers last time, and they spent a lot of money to oppose the ballot issue. If we bring them to the table, I am confident that we can solve this problem by acting together.
Thank you. Brian?
Look, the developers' priorities don't seem to be an issue. It is the issue, and it is the problem. We are cannibalizing our neighborhoods in order to subsidize a certain part of development in a certain part of town, and that's wrong. Not only did voters approve a bond levy to improve their sewers, and they expected those promises to be kept, the city has now delayed those improvements, much needed sewer improvements, not just in the 4th Ward. I hear it on Agan Street in the 1st Ward, Ridgefield neighborhood off of College Park. Place and place again, this has happened. But to compound that frustration, we are now destroying the Katy Trail in order to push through the Flat Branch sewer connection, at which the same taxpayers are paying for 75% of that cost. The developer is paying for 25% of that cost downtown, even though they're producing 100% of the demand for that new sewer. That's wrong, and it has to stop. So what I want to do, we should not have reprioritized those improvements. I'm the only candidate running for mayor that supports a sufficiency of services test to make sure that new development has the infrastructure required before construction begins.
Thank you very much. This question will start with Brian, since we're dealing with city infrastructure. Former councilman in the 3rd Ward, Gary Kespel, is fond of saying that the budget would only allow us to pave roads once, every road in Columbia once every 50-some years. I forget his number, but he's done the math, and I trust Gary's math. And since he's not running for office, I can use his number. The city doesn't have the proper budgetary means to deal with the road problems that we have and the need we have for road repairs. We're growing at an incredible rate. How would you address the problem of keeping our existing roads in good condition while also growing at the pace that we've been growing over the last 20 years? Brian?
Well, I think part of that example dramatizes the disparity in where the city is growing. Quite frankly. If we were encouraging the type of growth that raises the tide for all of us, perhaps we would have that revenue available. And if we don't, then we need to look at those developer fees to make sure that they're providing the infrastructure necessary. You know, let me give you an example. If Aaron Fields, the California developer that's developing the 10-story building downtown, would go out into the undeveloped part of the city of Columbia and buy 2 acres, he would have to put in all of the water, all of the electrical, all of the sewer, all of the sidewalks, all of the roads, all of the fire hydrants. But because he's building that, because he bought 2 acres in the middle of downtown, he doesn't have to do anything. He just has to connect to the infrastructure that we all paid for. And that's not fair. So I want to make sure that we have a balanced growth plan that encourages the type of growth within that urban service area where we have the existing economies of scale to have more efficiencies in how the city delivers not just the transportation, but all of the infrastructure improvements that are there.
Skip.
The rules that are in place today are the product of our public processes. We have set those rules, and to attack a guy who wants to come in and spend millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars and utilize the rules that we created, I think we need to look at ourselves. And the solution, I mean, absolutely, Renee, we don't have enough money to fund the maintenance and new road construction. And that has a potential to be a significant problem for us. We have to find a new funding source. And I do think that the development fee increase is appropriate. I also believe that that will find broad acceptance across the political spectrum if we get everybody to the same table and listen to what everybody has to say, to hear the pros and cons of increasing to a particular spot, because I know we can get additional revenue. It probably won't pay for everything all at once, but I do think it's doable, and I'm certainly willing to do my share to help the process to a solution.
Thank you. This question starts with Skip. I asked this the last time. We'll see what you gentlemen think. Do we have a relationship problem with the county, and how would you address it? Skip.
We obviously have had a relationship problem with the county. Getting sued by the county is a pretty obvious evidence that we have a relationship problem. You know, frankly, I don't think, I think it was premature for that. To me, I think the problem could have been solved by something short of litigation, but we are where we are. The county won the lawsuit, and I think the judge, under the circumstances, made the appropriate decision. But that doesn't mean we can't repair that relationship. And I have a long-standing relationship with the presiding commissioner. I have a very good relationship with the other two commissioners and almost all of the county office holders, and I will have no difficulty repairing that relationship. When I filed for the mayor's position, one of the first people who came to see me, I don't know what that means, but one of the first people who came to see me was the presiding commissioner, and he was very supportive of my candidacy. I can solve that problem without any question.
For those of you in Radio Land, we had a little light.
I think that's
dimming.
an infrastructure crisis.
It's called a brownout. I think that's what that's called. So we can talk transmission lines here in a minute.
You know,
Brian, I'm sorry. I hope
Sure,
I didn't,
no, to
I hope I
answer
didn't
that-
take his time. Brian Treece, go ahead.
No, and to answer that question, I mean, clearly there is a communication problem there. I mean, the fact that the county felt that their only resort was to file a lawsuit against the city is problematic. And the fact that the city couldn't settle that lawsuit when all they really wanted was a monthly meeting is equally frustrating. But, you know, I want to go back to a comment. You know, it was in December of 2014 that our city manager said we were 100% out of infrastructure. Now, I don't think that's true necessarily, but I wonder if that statement hadn't been made, would there have been this TIF lawsuit from the county? Would there have been an Opus repeal effort? You know, would we have been subject to the litigation that the city is now subject to? And the judge's ruling was right. The city had failed to submit the required reports with respect to a tax increment financing project. And, you know, that's a clear function of transparency here, that the city was unable to produce the jobs numbers and how much money had been paid to create the number of jobs projected.
Thank you. Okay, since I brought it up. Transmission lines. So the city council and the city staff made a decision about where transmission lines would be placed to build the redundancy, the necessary redundancy required for the city power infrastructure into the city. And then it was brought forward a second time. Do you think that the way that it was handled, bringing it forward again after a decision had already been made by council, is appropriate in this situation or any other situation where council has made and voted upon a decision when there's been resources expended? Brian, you're up first.
Sure, I think it was completely appropriate. I mean, from the evidence that I have seen, there was new information that was not presented to council during that decision-making process. And I want to be clear, I'm opposed to option A, but I'm also opposed to option B and B2. My number one priority would be to protect the property values, not just in those neighborhoods, but all neighborhoods. And let me be clear, those high-voltage power lines are designed in part to push more electrical capacity downtown. Okay, so once again, we're cannibalizing not just much-needed sewer improvements in our older neighborhoods, but now pushing through these high-voltage power lines in some of our newest neighborhoods. I think that's a short-sighted solution. And what I would rather do from a planning perspective is go 5 miles further south and use the existing corridor where right-of-way already exists on Highway 163 and use that to lever new growth from Cooper's Landing all the way back up to Route K and provide those 161 kV lines in a way that can incentivize and encourage growth in an area where we want it to occur anyway. Now, the other thing I want to be clear, the city already has an ordinance. I'll come back to that if I can. Thank you.
Thank you for respecting the clock, Brian. I appreciate that. Skip.
I think that it was appropriate because the city council is charged with the responsibility of looking at its decisions, and it brought the subject back up. I would have voted the same way Karl Skala voted. I would have voted no. I wouldn't have rejected option A because, because once the council makes a decision and we spend millions of dollars and we ask our staff to spend thousands of hours preparing and engineering this plan, it should not be, the decision to abandon that plan should not be lightly made. And I'm not saying that it was, but it should not be reversed unless there is clear evidence that it was a wrong decision, and I'm not sure that that was the case. Having said that, we're at a point where we now have to reevaluate, and I frankly agree with Brian that using this central electric substation on 163 and bringing it around may be the best choice. And I know Water and Light is looking at that now. And if we can achieve a solution that doesn't negatively affect many people, that's a great win.
Now, this question may take me, and a gentleman, he clarified it for me, so I do appreciate that. You'll have to listen closely. I feel like I've gone back to Econ 51, and I had to have some explanation. So bear with me. Okay, you ready? 60% population growth in 24 years is what we've had in the city of Columbia. 60% in 24 years. And the traffic, I would say, would attest to that. During the same period, there's been a massive decline in the level of service provided by our public capital infrastructure, roads, sewers, etc., across most categories and by most any reasonable measure. During that time, the city has relied on population growth and the retail sales growth model of economic development, meaning we get more people, gives us more tax dollars. Do you agree that this growth model has not worked, or has it worked, for paying for our public capital infrastructure needs, keeping them at the high level of service they were in 1990, or do you think something else needs to be done? And I think this goes to Skip first.
You know, I think the model could work, but the central problem is internet sales aren't taxed, and we're losing about $10 million a year. And I'm hopeful that the federal government will solve that problem for us, because that will go a long way to allowing this model to work. But it's absolutely true that we're not keeping up with growth. And it's not just our roads and sewers, it's our fire department and our police department. We are not funding those departments at an acceptable level either. The level of growth for our city of Columbia is outpacing the growth in our fire departments and police departments. These are difficult problems. These are problems we're going to have to solve. And we can fight with each other and argue about it, or we can try to figure out the best possible solution. I think that it's going to require an incremental, gradual, methodical, and deliberate approach. I'm not sure it can be solved all at one time, but it's going to take some effort and a lot of tough decisions.
Thank you, Skip Leuther. Brian Treece.
You know, I came here to college 30 years ago, and I don't think anybody predicted at that time that we would be at a population of 108,000 people. Based on the DLC's projections, our population could double in the next 30 years. So while we've seen 60% increase in the last 24, imagine where we're going to be at in the next 30 years. And so clearly the population growth model and the projections and the economies they use to plan for that growth haven't kept pace. If they had, we wouldn't always be needing a new school district bond. We wouldn't be needing, road district bonds or more property tax increases, et cetera. We would have the population growth that could sustain the demand for the services that those people are generating. And so I do think it's going to require a new model. But that's why I go back to my analogy of a blueprint. If we're going to be one of the fastest growing cities, we need to plan for that. We're going to need a new power plant in the next 30 years. Our coal burning plant is already burning biomass. It's not efficient. It can't meet EPA standards. At some point, we're going to need a new power plant. We're going to need new roads and the infrastructure that goes with that, serving that population.
Thank you. You are listening to News Talk 1400 KFRU. We are at the Columbia Public Library, and we are doing our mayoral candidate forum. And the next question will go to candidate Skip Leuther first, since we're talking about what? Oh, I keep missing Brian. I've made 2 mistakes now. I have 3 strikes, and I got to leave, man. Brian, this will go to you first. Thank you for keeping me on my toes, gentlemen. All right, tax increment financing. Okay, everybody wake up. Here's the question. I will read from the card. I have come to believe that this funding is overused, not understood by the public, and is taxation without representation. What is your opinion, and when and how should it be used? Brian.
Well, first of all, a tax increment financing is a promise that taxpayers make to a developer that in lieu of paying property taxes or sales taxes, they promise to create a certain number of jobs. I mean, generally speaking, I think tax increment financing is appropriate in very focused, targeted, job-specific, geographic-specific areas where there's a clear but-for test. But for that tax increment financing benefit, that project would not go forward. But I want to be clear. I also support clawbacks, and that is a mechanism in the tax increment financing agreement that requires the developer to pay back the benefit, to pay back the taxes that he has benefited from up front over a 23-year period if the number of jobs he's created does not occur. And so that would be one of the things that I would do if the city would ever engage in that type of negotiation. Now, TDDs are another thing, and those are judge-approved tax increases that benefit developers, that socialize the costs among all of us, but the developers privatize the profits of the infrastructure that we have paid for.
Thank you very much. Skip?
You know, the TIF subject came up a couple of years ago when the city tried to create a TIF district in downtown Columbia, and it didn't meet the statutory test for a TIF district because it simply wasn't blighted. I mean, look at downtown Columbia right now. I mean, it's the most vibrant it's been that I can recall, and to call it blighted is it's just inappropriate. There are places in Columbia that might benefit from a TIF. The business loop might. But you've got to be very careful when you're talking about taking tax dollars away from the school district. And so I would favor a law that, and I hate to say this, but Kansas has actually passed a law that requires the school districts to approve a TIF district before it can be approved by the city. I think that's a good idea because anytime you're taking money away from the school district, they better be on board with it. The school district, in my opinion, is one of the most, if not the most important asset we have, are children, and they need to be protected.
Thank you very much. You brought up downtown Columbia, Skip, so I have this right, I know. You'll get this first. What is your vision of how downtown Columbia should be?
You know, vibrancy is critically important. Diversity is important, not only with the residents who live downtown, but the businesses that we have. And I'm proud of the effort that I've assisted with as a member of the CID and the SPD boards in getting rid of the canopies, in creating a historic district, and in encouraging people to come downtown through the Twilight Festivals and the many other things that we've sponsored. We have a great downtown. We have restaurants galore. We have businesses that didn't exist 20 years ago, and I'm very excited about that. We have problems with downtown, but you didn't ask about that. You asked about the vision. Where we have a wide demographic of people living downtown, shops and vibrant options, an art district, a museum district, and a museum district would be great, as well as a entertainment district as well. So just something that makes, that there needs to be something for everybody in downtown Columbia.
Thank you very much. Brian?
You know, I've been working the last 10 years to implement my vision for downtown, and it involves preserving what we love about downtown, Shakespeare's and Booch's and the Niedermeyer, right? And creating a set of guidelines. And, you know, this is a major departure for my opponent and I. You know, he has really led the effort to drag his feet and drag the CID's feet on how we plan for that growth. He wants those guidelines to be voluntary. If developers would do it on their own, they'd already be doing it, but they're not. And, you know, we go back to cannibalizing our neighborhoods in order to subsidize this certain type of development in a certain part of town, and we're ruining everything that we all come to love about Columbia, and frankly what makes us unique from other cities, whether it's Lee Summit or Chesterfield or Blue Springs. So I want a diverse downtown too that is safe for not just students but also seniors and young professionals, where we have nice restaurants and art galleries instead of just tattoo parlors and t-shirt shops. Because we're creating this monoculture downtown where it's just going to be a student private dorm district instead of a community in a downtown that we all enjoy.
Thank you very much. This is going to be my last question before we do closing statements. There were so many others too. The Missouri State Legislature has passed several prohibitions on cities, or tried to, minimum wage laws, putting controls on local government, trying to wade in on, I think there was one on trash bags or something with grocery sacks. I think they tried that one once. What are your thoughts about state government trying to exercise control about what a local government can and cannot do? Brian?
I think state government ought to put their oxygen mask on first before they try to help someone else put theirs on, frankly. Look, I'm always going to, local control is going to be best. No one can tell me that the people in this room and the people that show up every Monday night at a city council meeting don't have the best interests of their city at heart. And that's what I want to try to preserve. It seems like the legislature likes local control when they don't like the federal mandate. And when they love the federal mandate or the state ban on something, they want to prohibit local control of doing the same. I think as a charter city, we need to preserve all of our options there to really create local solutions for the local challenges that we face.
Thank you. Skip?
We all really need to support the efforts of the Missouri Municipal League in their fight against the onslaught that the Missouri legislature has initiated to deplete the authority that the local municipal governments have. We need to have as many tools in our tool chest as possible to deal with the very serious problems that we have. Columbia is a great town with a great downtown, in my opinion, not one that is dying. But we have to have tools to solve the problems that do exist in downtown Columbia. And having the legislature tell us that we have fewer tools than necessary makes absolutely no sense to me.
Thank you very much. We will now have 1-minute closing statements. We will go in reverse ballot order, which means, Mr. Brian Treece, you may now make your closing statement.
Well, thank you. My name is Brian Treece, and I'm proud to be running for mayor. This is a great city. And like a lot of people in this town, I came here to college 30 years ago, and the things that I fell in love with really kept me here. And I worry that this vanishing face of our downtown and the change in our community that we're all seeing is going to change the type of people that we attract to our town. And as mayor, I want to make sure that we have a vision and a plan for that future. I'm really proud that there is a new generation of leadership stepping up that has the innovation and the fresh ideas and the new ideas and, frankly, the passion to tackle these challenges head on, to create solutions for the challenges that we face. And I ask for your vote on Tuesday, April 5th.
Thank you very much. Mr. Skip Leuther.
Thank you. I think it says a great deal about me and my campaign and how I will serve, if elected as mayor, that I've had about 350 contributions from individuals across the demographic and political spectrum. I've been endorsed by every living mayor, including one who recently passed, Bob Smith, who was a dear friend of mine. To many people in Columbia, Bob Smith epitomized what's best about a public servant. He never looked for the limelight. He didn't walk away from tough decisions, and his integrity was never in doubt. I'm not sure I could have had a better role model to serve as mayor than Bob Smith. That's the kind of mayor I intend to be, and I would ask you for your vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, let's lay a round of applause for our mayoral candidates. We appreciate them making time for us this evening. The League of Women Voters, KFRU, and the Columbia Public Library thank all the candidates, speakers, and community members for participating this evening. We would also like to thank, as always, Sam Griffin for providing audio equipment for KFRU, and to my good friend Tom over there for keeping me on the air sounding good, and for recording this program to be aired on KOPN before the April 5th election, plus also on KFRU. Thanks to Sheila Kozler, I hope I didn't butcher your name, for recording the forum for Mediacom. Thank you, Sheila. And thanks to the Columbia Daily Tribune for live casting the forum as well. Thanks to Chris, Tom, Amy, and Patricia for helping with all the tech issues for the KFRU broadcast. Finally, please vote on April 5th. We want to see a high turnout like we did in March. So everyone, get out and vote, and thank you so much for being here. You are listening to News Talk 1400 KFRU.